Let's start with the products that I used. I used a lavender bush, 2 sunflower stems, 2 rolls of ribbon, and this antique rust metal ring that almost resembles a wagon wheel. I also am going to be using some spray foam insulation. This is called Gaps and Cracks for small gaps and cracks. You can find this at your local hardware store. To begin with, I prepared this at least 24 hours in advance, and I laid a piece of parchment paper on my work surface area so that when I applied the gaps and cracks, it did not stick to my surface. You can use wax paper as well. When you apply the gaps and cracks, it will expand about 1.5 times the original amount that you spray. So it's very important not to overindulge. However, you can use a common kitchen serrated knife to trim down your foam if it expanded too far beyond what you wanted it to be. Keep in mind that when you use the spray foam, that when you go to fill it with your florals or greenery, you're going to need to fill a wider area if your gaps and cracks or your foam is wider. Also, just a reminder that you do want to let it set up for at least 24 hours to dry, or else it will still be moist in the center. Now I'm going to start by trimming back and cutting off each one of these stems of my lavender bush. And I do use a glue pot that you won't see on camera. I take my lavender stems and I kind of measure out how far I want the stem part to be, measuring how far it's going to go into the foam itself. So I brought my parchment paper back out so I didn't get glue on my table. And as I mentioned, my glue pot's off to the side, but I am gluing each one of these in. So I start by going lateral, left to right, and I do that methodically so that my design is more even on both sides. So you're going to take the lavender bush and just continue to add the lavender to a space and design that is pleasing to you. You don't have to use my exact method or style, but the technique is what is really important here. I also have a rule that I'm going to use the entire pick because, to be quite honest, I have a whole drawer full of miscellaneous picks that I was going to reuse and I never have. So that's another reason to use the entire bush on here. You notice that I'm leaving a gap in the center. That gap that's in the center is where we will be placing a bow after we prepare the design. Now I'm going to take the sunflower bush, and I particularly love this type of bush because it has all the foliage and greenery in it. We have some ferns, some frosted leaves in there, and I love the texture and the variety that this pick has to offer. So again, I'm going to add some glue to each pick after trimming it down to size. And it's all wired so I can maneuver the sunflower around to face the direction that I want it to be and place this item inside of our foam. This really is an easy but beautiful project when you get done with it. Now that I have both the lavender and sunflower bushes added, I'm going to pull some of that lavender forward so that it looks like it's naturally growing in to the sunflower. The yellow and the lavender really complement each other in this design, and we want some of that lavender to be showcased out front and not all be hidden behind the design. Now it's time to make a bow, and for this next part of the tutorial, I am going to go slower for you because I realize that many people have a challenge making bows. I like to use the Easy Bow Maker, And for this, I measured out 12-inch tails, and I'm adding my wired ribbon into my Easy Bow Maker. I am making about 6-inch loops, and you'll notice that I'm twisting the ribbon so that the ugly side is facing up on my right before I make my loop. So twisting helps the center of the bow become less bulky, and it puts your ribbon in the correct position so that when you make your next loop, the ribbon is facing correctly. For this ribbon, I'm making 3 loops on each side. So each loop is 6 inches, and I'm making a total of 3. Once I'm done, I'm going to bring out that tail and cut it about 12 inches. I do dovetail the ends of my bows, but that's not necessary on every bow. The second ribbon that I'm using is a 1.5-inch ribbon. And in case I forgot to mention it, the first ribbon is a 2.5-inch ribbon. So again, I'm going to dovetail the end of it. And dovetailing just puts that little V shape at the end of your ribbon. I'm going to measure out 12 inches again, twist my ribbon, and push it down all the way to the bottom of that Easy Bow Maker. Give it a twist. I have another loop. The loop with the black and white ribbon is actually a 5-inch. So I came in just a little bit shorter than the first loop so that this one would allow me to see the ribbon behind it. Now I did 2 loops on each side, but this last loop that I'm doing is a really short loop. It's about 1 inch. And what this will do is actually cover up or hide the mechanics when we go to add the bow to our design. All right, so let's get some floral wire. I do use a 22 gauge floral wire, and I prefer 22 gauge because it does not break on me. And if I have to make several twists when I'm attaching a bow, that's pretty important. If you've ever had your wire break, it's not fun to try and hold your ribbon and put it all back together, put your bow back together. So that, because I did that extra loop, I've got both tails of my black ribbon on the same side, and I want to make sure that my wire goes over the top of that little loop that I made. I'm going to pull that off of my Easy Bow Maker, turn this over, and now I'm going to tighten that wire behind it as tight as I can. When I twist, I'm going to twist the ribbon, not the wire. You'll notice that my hand will stay still once I get it positioned correctly and a good grip on it, but I'm twisting the ribbon because it makes a tighter connection that way. Now that we have the wire secure, I can adjust the loops, and this is what I refer to as fluffing my bow. So I'm pulling those loops apart. They're all wired. I'm not afraid to twist and tug on it to shape it to the shape that I envision in my mind. I usually start with the back ribbon first and get it in position before I start working on ribbons above it. The 2-ribbon bow is a great bow to start working with. It's not too complicated, or you can just use a single color ribbon as well and do one single color. They make elegant bows. How exciting! Now we're ready to add our bow to our rust ring. So I'm taking those floral wires, one around the top and the bottom, and I'm going to twist that around, not too tightly that it cuts through the foam, I'm going to trim it with my wire cutters, and I'm going to put those sharp edges and stick them back into the foam so that no one gets hurt on them. And then I also take my hot glue and cover the wires with the glue so that they stay secure and it doesn't harm my customer's door, whoever may purchase this, or wall. Now we're going to make a hanger for our ring. So I'm going to take that 1.5 inch ribbon. I'm going to cut about a 6-inch piece of ribbon and fold it in half. Now I'm going to loop that around and make a circle, and I'm going to use this to hang my ring from. This step is optional. You can hang the ring on just a hook or a nail, whatever you choose to do. However, for this one, I wanted to show you how I use ribbon to make my hanger. You can also use a piece of jute twine, especially with this design, because it would look really natural with this. All right, guys, look at our finished product. So our rustic farmhouse metal wreath ring with the sunflowers just turned out beautiful. I know so many people that would love to have this hanging in their home. If you make one, I love to see what you did. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like my channel. I do tutorials every week here at Festive Creations.